Okay, thanks a lot for being here. Thank you for inviting me, Filippo and Elisa, and thanks for the people online for being here. So yeah, I'm going to talk about hoaxing. It's a special kind of mass deception as a sort of lying fiction hybrid. And yeah, I'm still at Nicod at the moment, but as some of you may know, I'm going to start a new project in Groningen in January. And so this is basically one of the sub-projects of that larger project. So it's sort of overview of the first thoughts that I have on hoaxing. Okay, this is the plan of the talk. So I'm first going to talk about what I'm talking about when I say hoax. Then I'm going to give an analysis in terms of common ground updates. And then I'm going to give an analysis of hoaxing in terms of addressees belief updates. Right. Okay, so what is a hoax? So this term hoax, it has a very broad meaning and a more narrow meaning. So on the very broad meaning, a hoax is any kind of mass deception. So something like A Million Little Pieces is also a hoax on that term. So this is a biography that was initially published as non-fictional, but then it was later unmasked as being partly fabricated, so contains some embellishments of the author's life. So this is also a hoax on this broad understanding of the term hoax, mass deception. But I'm more interested in this narrow meaning of the term, which Fleming and O'Carroll call the didactic hoax. And this is the kind of mass deception that is intended to be discovered rather than the attempted fraud. So what kind of mass deception is intended to be discovered, right? So quintessential hoax, the Blair Witch Project, which some of you may remember. So this is a documentary style horror movie from the 90s, and it features signs of supernatural evil. The Blair Witch lives in a forest. So when it was initially released, it was accompanied by a online extensive advertising campaign that claimed that it was actual found footage, that there were actual students missing, and that they found the tapes that they made. And this caused a lot of discussion, uncertainty amongst audience members about the actual status of this movie, right? But nowadays, we all recognize this movie as fictional, right? Oh, hey, that's presenter view.
Is working until 2 seconds.
Well, right, but now it's presenter. Right. Then I'll just get my notes up here. That's weird. So, yeah, Blair Witch Project. So this, nowadays we all recognize this as a non-actual account of events, right? It's fictional. But back then, people were actually deceived and intentionally deceived. Indeed, it became such a hype because it was successful in deceiving people, right? Yet, arguably, the producers of this fiction, they never intended for that deception to last forever, right? They intended for the deception to be overtly recognized so that everyone would recognize how good their prank was, right?
Oh, there you go.
Right, okay. Yeah, one more, yeah. Okay, so this is a different hoax, more mundane hoax. So this is the Instagram privacy settings hoax. So this is a short alarming text that was posted on Instagram and also on other platforms. And it states that Instagram users must copy-paste this text before a certain date in order to prevent Instagram from publishing their photos and messages, right? So again, some people were actually deceived by this. They actually thought that that was real and they started reposting it, right? But by now we all know that this is just a prank, right? It's just a hoax. So presumably the people that originally wrote that, they also indeed intended to deceive at least part of their audience. Otherwise, the whole hoax would not work, right? So you need people to be deceived and repost the text, but you also want people that recognize the hoax as a hoax so that they can appreciate your prank and they can laugh with you, right? So, and also arguably, they did not intend the people that were deceived to be permanently deceived. They intended them to also later on find out that, oh well, I was pranked and I feel stupid about it, etc. Okay, and then yeah, so these two examples we're used to calling hoaxes. But so I think that something like Santa or the Dutch Sinterklaas or the Tooth Fairy, they're all kind of similar, like structurally similar to hoaxes. So you have some intentional deception of a certain group of people, namely young children. But this deception is not meant to last forever, right? It's no parent's intention that the child keeps on believing that Santa exists into adulthood. And also the people that are in the know, they sort of enjoy this practice of seeing those gullible people being deceived, right? So yeah, indeed, as the following discussion will reveal, I think Santa is a hoax, right? So I do not agree with people that list Santa as a fictional character. That's just wrong. That's sort of adult perspective that you take, right? But I also do not agree with, for instance, Semeijn, who says that Santa is a lie character. So, and related to that, I also do not wholeheartedly agree with this claim that parents lie to their children when they say Santa exists, right? No, it's a hoax character, and parents are not lying to their children; they are hoaxing them. Okay. So those are a bunch of examples of hoaxes. So how should we analyze the hoax? So maybe you're a bit puzzled by what I said just now. What do you mean the parents are not lying to their children? So maybe you think, yeah, a hoax, it's a kind of lie, right? Or at least it involves also a lie. Well, of course, that depends on your definition of lying, but yeah, if you take the traditional definition of lying, or at least what man calls the traditional definition of lying, then to lie is to make a believed false statement to another person with the intention that the other person believes that statement to be true. Okay, so a mother that says to her child, Santa exists, that mother does not herself believe that Santa exists, but she does intend to deceive her child into believing that Santa exists. So yes, that's a lie. Or the advertising team from the Blair Witch Project, they say, this is found footage. They do not themselves believe that this is found footage, but they do intend to deceive at least part of their audience into believing that this is found footage. So yes, again, seems to be a lie, right? So a hoax seems to involve this sort of traditional standard criteria for being a lie. Yet, as you maybe also sort of intuitively feel right now, that's not all you can say, right, about a hoax. It's not just a lie. That doesn't really seem to cover it. So several authors in media studies, they've looked into hoaxes, and indeed they've argued towards this effect, right? So hoaxing has distinct success conditions from lying. So, well, what do they say? A whole bunch of things, but so the two most important things is that a successful hoax involves only temporary deception, right? So a stereotypical lie works if the audience remains deceived and remains forever deceived, right? But a hoax does not work, is not successful if some audience members or if the audience remains forever deceived. So Semeijn also calls this a sunset clause. So at some point, it has to be revealed as an untruth. And then also, so Fredal and Packard, they've argued that a successful hoax creates a split in its audience. So in order for the hoax to both work and receive appropriate recognition, you have to have this split in the audience between those that are deceived, that fall for it, and those that are in the know and that can appreciate the hoax, right? So those are like the two insights that I want to focus on today. But I mean, that's not all that has been said about hoaxing, and also not all that can be said about hoaxing. So other insights are, for instance, that hoaxes are designed to entertain. So we laugh at something like the Blair Witch Project, Santa's supposed to be fun, but something like A Million Little Pieces, we condemn that. That's wrong, right? And another insight, so typically, as I also said in the beginning, this term hoax is used for mass deception. So deception that is happening between just 4 or 5 people, even though maybe it does indeed involve only temporary deception, and it does involve a split in the audience, and it is designed to entertain. If it's so small scale, then maybe the term hoax is not appropriate for that, right? So this is also an issue. But I'm not entirely sure what to do with those insights yet. So I'm just focusing on these first two. So what I want to do is sort of translate these two insights into the familiar language of philosophy of fiction, philosophy of language, philosophy of deception. So can we make these two insights somehow more precise? So for instance, can we give an account of hoaxing in terms of common ground updates? So what is common ground? So I'm hoping that that is a somewhat familiar term here. So yeah, hope that common ground is common ground. So central notion in pragmatics. So in pragmatics, it means the shared presuppositions between conversational participants, right? And you can, as Stalnaker does in 2002, analyze that as common acceptance with an iteration of belief, right? So P is common ground between us if I accept that P, you accept that P, I believe that you accept that P, etc., etc. Yeah, and then so assertions are then analyzed as updates or proposals to update the common grounds. So if I tell you my father has a red car, then I propose that it becomes the case that I accept that my father has a red car, you accept that my father has a red car, I believe that you accept that my father has a red car, etc., etc. And then when we continue our discourse, then that proposition that my father has a red car is going to be one of our presuppositions going forward, right? Okay, so that's very quickly is common ground. So let's look at Stocker's analysis of lies and fictional statements in this common ground framework. So he has a sort of nice framework of how you can fit lies and fiction into the common ground framework. So in his 2013 and 18 publications, he makes this distinction between the official common ground and unofficial common grounds. So you have the official common ground, that's for assertions. So this is the shared presuppositions about the actual world. So when I say someone drove into my father's car during the night, now I propose that from now onwards, it's official common ground that someone drove into my father's car, right? So I accept this about the actual world, you accept this about the actual world, etc. And a lie is a kind of assertion, right, in Stocker's framework. So also a proposal to update the official common ground. And then fictional statements, they work very differently. They update unofficial common grounds. And since you can have, so these are the shared presuppositions people have about a particular fictional world. And because, of course, there are many different fictional worlds, there can also be many different unofficial common grounds between two people. So, for instance, when Tolkien wrote In a Hole in the Ground There Lived a Hobbit, he proposed to update the unofficial common ground between himself and the reader with this proposition. So he proposed that they would commonly accept this, but in an unofficial way, right? Yeah, and then more recently, Stocker has had this account of fictional statements as updating a fictional record. Works kind of like unofficial common ground, but also a bit different, but I'm largely going to ignore that. So the important thing is that in terms of how they update the conversational context, you have lies and assertions on the one hand and fictional statements on the other hand, right? Okay, so how about hoaxing? How can we fit in hoaxing in this story, right? How does a hoax update the official or the unofficial common ground or whatever? So yeah, before doing that, it's important to realize, so usually when we talk about the analysis of assertions, lies, and fictional statements, it will do to just focus on two people, speaker and addressee. But when you consider hoaxes, I don't think that works, right? Because of this split in the audience. So you always need to consider at least a three-part discourse, right? So with a speaker and two addressees, where one is in the know and the other one is deceived, right? So so for hoaxes such as the Blair Witch Project and also for Santa, there are enormous groups of people, right, that are deceived and people that are in the know. So let's simplify things a bit by considering a small-scale hoax, or if you prefer that way of talking about it, a small instantiation of a hoax. So just one family's discourse about Santa, right, with just three people. So Mother says, Santa has a big belly that shakes when he laughs. So the addressees here are the child who is deceived and the husband who is in the know, right? So on the sort of simplest view, a hoax is just a lie, right? And so that means that it updates the official common ground between mother, father, and child, right? So maybe you can say it's a deceptive lie towards the child and a bald-faced lie towards the father, but at least it's a lie that just updates the official common ground. So when mother says this, Santa has a big belly that shakes when he laughs, and she proposes that everyone accepts this now about the real world, etc., etc. So she also proposes that the father accepts this about the real world, right? For at least for the purpose of this conversation. So, I mean, I think that's fine. I think that the simple view is it works. It can account for their discourse, but it does like violate this this principle. So, if P is official common ground in some community of conversational speakers C, and C prime is a proper subset of C, then P is official common ground in C prime, right? It's kind of natural to think that. If P is common ground between A, B, and C, or official common ground between A, B, and C, then P is also going to be official common ground between A and B, right? So when I'm in a conversation with Filippo and Elisa, and I say, the guy that drove into my dad's car left a note, then I've updated our official common ground about the real world. If I then continue the conversation later just with Filippo, it is also now official common ground between us that the guy that drove into my dad's car left a note. Sorry, can you get me some water? I'm going to be coughing a lot there.
That's a good point, actually.
Thanks. But anyway, in this scenario with the parents, I don't think that's the case, right? So mother has said, Santa has a big belly. Thank you. Thanks. Guys. Thanks. If then later at night the parents meet up, children are already in bed, then it's not going to be official common ground between them that Santa exists and has a big belly, etc. Right? It's going to be official common ground between them that Santa does not exist. Okay, so I don't think that's necessarily problematic, right? That kind of principle is violated. It just shows that acceptance it cannot be a context-independent attitude. but I guess we already kind of accepted that, right? But also that acceptance has to be relativized to a specific conversational setting. In particular, it has to be relativized to sets of conversational participants, right? So A accepts that P in a conversation about the real world with A, B, and C, but A does not accept B in a conversation about the real world with just A and B, right? I mean, that can probably work, but ideally we then also have a kind of story of why in some cases this principle holds and in other cases it doesn't, right? Okay, anyway, another way of analyzing hoaxing in terms of common ground updates is what I call the splitting audiences view. So this takes this idea from Friedel and Packard really seriously. So really you have like two different speech acts going on in this case. So you can define a hoaxer as someone that performs two speech acts with two distinct audiences simultaneously. So the hoaxer performs a deceptive lie towards the people that are deceived and a fictional statement towards those that are in the know, right? So it's a proposal to update the official common ground with one part of their audience and the unofficial common ground or a particular unofficial common ground with another part of the audience. So this is also in line with what Carson says about a very similar case. So Carson describes also a case of an adult talking to both children and adults at the same time, and then describes, yeah, he is in a warranting context with the children, but not in a warranting. It is a lie towards the children, but it's not a lie towards the adults. But yeah, then Carson does not specify what the other speech act is, so I suggest that it's kind of makes sense to talk about that as a fictional statement. So if it's not a lie, then it's a fictional statement. I mean, so here you may wonder why. Maybe that's not very natural. Maybe you're thinking, yeah, okay, sure, it's a lie towards the people that you're deceiving, but why is it a fictional statement towards those that are in the know? So this is the part of the presentation where Santa asks questions about foundations of fiction. So consider that the people that are in the know, they can play along with the pretense and they can play along with the discourse that's going on, right? So consider Christmas morning in this household. So Dad does not believe that Santa exists, but now while he is unwrapping his gifts, he acts surprised and he says something like, oh yeah, Santa is a great guy. He knows exactly what I want. And then the mother said, oh yes, and he is so generous, haha. So this sort of collective pretense and pretense discourse, it is that is going on between the parents. It's deceptive towards the child, but between the people that are in the know, it is non-deceptive, right? They are not deceiving each other about Santa knowing their wishes, etc. So non-deceptive pretense, as Manolo also mentioned, that this has been argued for to be like the hallmark of fiction and fictional discourse. So in a similar vein, if we take this idea of splitting audiences, splitting speech acts, really two different events taking place at the same time, if we take that very seriously, then yeah, we could say that, well, we're going to ask what is that second event that is going on just between the parents, and then the answer is going to be, yeah, that is non-deceptive pretense, so it's a kind of fiction. So pretense between the people that are in to know is a sort of fiction. So, I mean, sort of the burning question is, can you do that, right? Are you allowed to call that a fiction between the parents? So the people that are collectively deceiving this third person, are you allowed to call that a fiction? Because there's still this deception taking place, right? And I mean, I don't have the answer to that. I'm not sure. That really just depends on how flexible you think the concept of fiction is, right? So in order to make this, the splitting audiences version, of the common ground analysis work, you need to have a notion of fiction that can be relativized to a subset of conversational participants, right? So that in between the parents, indeed, the pretense constitutes a fiction and Santa is a fictional character, etc., etc. But between the parents and the kid, it does not constitute a fiction, and Santa is not a fictional character, but a hoax character or something like that. I mean, maybe that can work. So maybe something to ease your mind. Note that if you allow for this flexible notion of fiction, you can also still allow that in case you do not specify the context, the subset of conversational participants, then you can just assume that you always take sort of wide scope. So if you do not specify in between the parents, then the question to is Santa a fictional character is just going to be no. Because if you do not qualify, then it's just wide scope and no, you consider everyone. But yeah, so I'm not really decided. I guess I lean more towards the simple view than the splitting audiences view. But yeah. So anyway, yeah, so if you allow for this, the splitting audiences view, then so mother says Santa has a big belly. She updates the official common ground with the kid, unofficial common ground with the dad. And similar, so if you have something like the Blair Witch Project, there's an official common ground being updated with the people that are deceived, and an unofficial common ground with the people that are in the know, and they consider the Blair Witch Project to be a kind of fiction. And then over time, this second group becomes larger and larger until everyone considers the Blair Witch Project to be a fiction, right? Okay. Okay, so I think this common ground analysis, it nicely explains how hoaxing discourse can work. So it explains how people, both the deceived and the non-deceived, can all still collectively engage in discourse. So on the simple view, that's simple because everyone just has the same official common ground that is updated as the conversation continues. And in the splitting audiences view, sure, you have different updates. You have official common grounds updates with the one and unofficial common ground updates with the other. But the one that is updating their official common ground is not aware of that fact. And also the content in all of these common grounds is the same. So still the conversation can sort of run smoothly. Okay, but there's some things that are hard to do with this common ground analysis. So first, and I think that's the most important one, it doesn't model the deception involved in hoaxing, right? Because in Stocker's framework, and there are good reasons for this, but in Stocker's framework, all of these common grounds are defined in terms of common acceptance, right? So the official one and the unofficial one, they're all acceptance-based. But this means that you can also lie without ever deceiving anyone, right? So a bald-faced lie. But it seems essential to the hoax that people are deceived, right? And you want the analysis to somehow account for that. So this is something you really cannot do in the common ground framework. And then the second thing is that it doesn't account for this temporary aspect, right? It doesn't do justice to the fact that if the child remains forever deceived, then the hoax is not successful, right? And this is because a lie is successful if the official common ground remains forever updated with that information, right? And on this analysis, either the hoax is just a lie or that the hoax is a lie and a fictional statement. So yeah. So the second thing, that is something that maybe we could fix in a common ground framework, though I don't think it contains the tools to do that yet, but obviously you can add that. So then it will be analysis of hoaxing along the terms of A hoaxes that P if and only if A first proposes that it's temporarily common ground that P, but also proposes that eventually not P is common ground, something like that. But yeah, so given that we also have this first issue, there is a better way, I think. So in the time that I have left, 5 minutes, I'm just going to quickly sketch the sort of first thoughts that I have for an analysis of analyzing hoaxing, not in terms of common ground updates, but in terms of updates of the addressee's beliefs about what is common belief. Yeah, and this is work in progress. So sort of uncertainty about many elements here, but yeah, this is the tentative proposal. So A initiates a hoax that B, if and only if, A does not believe that B, A communicates that B, and A thereby proposes that, two things. At first, some audience members are deceived that B, and they also believe that other audience members believe that B, etc., etc. And that eventually all audience members believe that B is merely true in some fiction/story. And also believe that all others believe this, etc., etc. So I am hoaxing that there is a Blair Witch, if and only if. I do not believe that there is a Blair Witch. I am communicating that there is a Blair Witch. And I propose that at first, some audience members believe, they are deceived into believing that there is a Blair Witch. And they also believe that all others believe, etc. And that also eventually all audience members will believe that there is no Blair Witch. It is only true in some fiction or story that there is a Blair Witch. So hoaxing is not exactly like fiction because it involves this sort of this first step, right? First, the deception of at least some people. But it's also not just a massive lie because it also involves a proposal to eventually end up with consensus about the fact that it's just a story, just a fiction. So this analysis makes some predictions about the success conditions of hoaxing that I think work well. So a hoax is unsuccessful if one of my proposals fails. So the hoax is unsuccessful if nobody is deceived, right? Then it doesn't work. But also the hoax is unsuccessful if someone remains permanently deceived, right? So I think that's good. So that's a nice thing about this definition. It's not, yeah. So last thing, because I should finish in time. This definition excludes the kind of lie that you tell, where you also have the intention to say something else later that to correct your lie, right? That is excluded by this definition. So so grandpa has died, daughter has a birthday party, daughter asked, where's grandpa? And then the parents say, well, he couldn't make it because he was visiting someone, but actually he's dead, right? So they're lying, but they are intending to tell their kid tomorrow that actually grandpa is dead, right? So that is not a hoax because this definition requires that the possibility for the addressee to discover the deception has to be somehow already proposed or already guaranteed by this first speech act, right? So your audience should be able to find out the truth, and you also intend for them to find out the truth without needing this a second speech act from you. Okay. Yeah. So like I said, very new project, and I have a lot of questions still, like these. Yeah, I'm not going to go through them now, but maybe one of these comes up during Q&A. Thank you.